In the vast, cold emptiness of space, a terrifying force moved silently between star systems. The Kraltu, a massive network of sentient machine creatures, had been destroying civilizations for thousands of years. They were not like ordinary machines or simple robots. These were intelligent, adaptive beings with a single purpose: consume and expand. The first signs of their approach always came as strange energy readings on distant monitoring stations. Planets would go dark, their communication systems suddenly going quiet. Then the complete destruction would follow. Entire worlds would be stripped of resources, their landscapes transformed into metallic wastelands that reflected the cold, calculated nature of the Kraltu. Scientists from multiple alien races had studied them for generations. They discovered that the Kraltu were not just mechanical entities, but a complex network of interconnected intelligence. Each machine was part of a larger system, working together like cells in a massive, planet-consuming organism. They could adapt to any defense, learn from every attack, and modify their strategies in milliseconds. Their bodies were not uniform. Some Kraltu machines were small, no larger than a human vehicle, while others stretched kilometers in length. They could transform, merge, and separate at will. Their outer shells were made of a strange metallic compound that could resist most known weapons. Energy blasts, nuclear strikes, and advanced particle weapons simply bounced off their incredible defensive systems. The Galactic Council, a collection of advanced civilizations, had spent trillions of resources trying to understand and stop the Kraltu. Massive fleets had been destroyed. Entire planetary defense systems had been crushed within minutes of engagement. No strategy seemed to work against these relentless machines. Historians would later describe the Kraltu as a nightmare that moved through space. They did not just destroy planets, they consumed them completely. Entire ecosystems would be transformed into raw materials. Civilizations would be erased, their histories and cultures turned into simple data points for the machine network's continuous expansion. Some alien researchers believed the Kraltu had a form of consciousness, but not like organic beings understand it. Their intelligence was cold, calculated, and completely focused on growth and consumption. They did not feel emotions, did not understand compassion, and saw all other life forms as potential resources to be processed. The most terrifying aspect of the Kraltu was their ability to learn and adapt. Each encounter with a new civilization provided them with more data, more understanding of potential resistance strategies. They would quickly develop countermeasures, making each subsequent attack more efficient and devastating. Millions of planets had already fallen to their advance. The galaxy was slowly being transformed into a massive machine network, with the Kraltu at its center. No one knew their origin. Some theories suggested they were created by an ancient civilization as a weapon, while others believed they were a natural evolution of mechanical life. Their movement was systematic and precise. They would first send small scout machines to analyze a planetary system. These scouts would collect detailed information about resources, potential resistance, and strategic advantages. Then the larger consumption machines would arrive, breaking down entire planets into raw materials in a matter of days. The scientific community was divided. Some wanted to fight, while others believed resistance was futile. The Kraltu had never been defeated, and their technological capabilities seemed to grow with each passing year. Their network was so complex that traditional warfare strategies became useless almost immediately. As they moved closer to the central regions of the known galaxy, panic started to spread. Civilizations began evacuating entire star systems. Refugees moved in massive ships, carrying whatever remnants of their cultures they could save. The Kraltu were coming, and nothing seemed capable of stopping them. Little did anyone know that a small research team on a distant planet was about to change everything. A human scientist had been studying their patterns, looking for something that everyone else had missed. And in the cold calculations of these machine creatures, a tiny weakness was waiting to be discovered. The Kraltu continued their relentless advance, unaware that their seemingly perfect system was about to encounter something they could not predict: human determination. On a small research station orbiting a distant moon, David Kim worked quietly. He was not like other researchers. While his colleagues argued about complex theories, he remained focused, studying the Kraltu's invasion patterns with a patience that seemed almost superhuman. The research station was simple but well-equipped. Computer screens covered every wall, displaying complex data streams about the machine creatures. David had been tracking their movements for years, collecting information that others thought was meaningless. His colleagues called him crazy, but he knew something important was hidden in the data. Most scientists believed the Kraltu were unbeatable. They had destroyed thousands of civilizations, consuming entire planetary systems without effort. But David saw something different. He noticed small patterns, tiny moments of hesitation in their seemingly perfect system of attack and consumption. His background was unusual. Unlike many researchers who came from advanced scientific families, David grew up in a small town on Earth. He learned patience from his grandmother, who taught him that complex problems needed careful observation. While other scientists used complicated equipment, David trusted his ability to see what others missed. The research station was quiet most of the time. David would spend days analyzing data, drinking strong coffee, and making notes. He created complex mathematical models that tracked the Kraltu's movement patterns. Where others saw random destruction, he saw a system with potential weaknesses. One night, after 72 hours of continuous research, something caught his eye. A tiny fluctuation in the Kraltu's communication network appeared in his data models. Most researchers would have ignored it, but David knew this was important. He began to dig deeper, running more complex analysis programs. The fluctuation was microscopic, so small that it would be invisible to most scanning systems. But David understood that in complex networks, even the smallest weakness could be crucial. He started developing a special computer algorithm that could exploit this tiny gap in the Kraltu system. His colleagues thought he was wasting time. The research station's director had warned him multiple times that his research was considered unimportant. But David remained calm and focused. He knew that sometimes the most important discoveries come from looking at problems differently. Days turned into weeks. David refined his algorithm, making it more precise. He used simulation programs to test how the Kraltu might respond to different types of digital interference. Each test provided more information, helping him understand the machine creatures' complex communication network. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a standard simulation, David discovered that the Kraltu's interconnected system had a unique vulnerability. Their massive network, which was supposed to be their greatest strength, could also be their biggest weakness. If the right signal was sent at the right moment, it could cause a complete system collapse. Most scientists would have immediately published their findings or called for a large research team. But David was different. He understood that the Kraltu were intelligent and would quickly adapt to any obvious attack strategy. He needed a plan that was subtle and precise. He began creating a specialized quantum disruption signal. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a carefully designed digital code that could potentially break the Kraltu's communication network. The signal was so complex that it would take years for most computers to even understand its structure. As he worked, David knew the stakes were high. If he was wrong, nothing would change. But if he was right, humanity might have a chance to stop the most dangerous threat the galaxy had ever seen. His small research station, floating quietly around a distant moon, could be the place where everything changed. The Kraltu continued their march across the galaxy, unaware that a quiet human researcher was about to challenge their seemingly unstoppable existence. David Kim might look ordinary, but he carried something extraordinary, the potential to save countless civilizations. The research facility buzzed with nervous energy. David Kim had been working for weeks without proper sleep, his eyes fixed on computer screens showing complex mathematical models. Something incredible was taking shape, a potential solution to stop the Kraltu. His quantum interference algorithm was unlike anything scientists had ever created. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense, but a digital code designed to break the machine creature's communication network. Each line of code represented a carefully calculated attack on their system. The Galactic Research Council had long considered the Krall-2 unbeatable. Thousands of advanced civilizations had tried and failed to stop these machine creatures. They consumed planets like humans might eat a piece of bread, breaking down entire ecosystems without emotion or hesitation. David's approach was different. Where others wanted to fight with weapons, he sought to understand the Krall-2's fundamental communication structure. He discovered that their strength was also their greatest weakness. Their interconnected network could be disrupted if attacked at the right moment. Days turned into weeks. David rarely left his research station. Food became an afterthought, and sleep was something he stole in short moments between calculations. His computer systems ran thousands of simulations, testing every possible scenario of his quantum disruption signal. The breakthrough came during a midnight simulation. A complex mathematical pattern emerged that showed how the Krall-2's communication network could potentially collapse. Most scientists would have missed this tiny detail, but David saw it immediately, a microscopic vulnerability that could change everything. His algorithm was designed to send a specialized signal that would cause a cascading failure in the Krall-2 system. It was not about destroying the machines, but about breaking their ability to communicate and coordinate. Like cutting the nervous system of a massive creature, the signal would cause total systemic failure. The research facility's other scientists began to take notice. What they had once considered impossible was now looking like a real solution. David's quiet determination had produced something extraordinary, a potential way to stop the galaxy's most dangerous threat. Complex computer models showed how the signal would work. It would travel through the Krall-2's communication network, creating tiny disruptions that would grow exponentially. Each mathematical calculation brought them closer to understanding how to defeat these machine creatures. David knew the risks. If his algorithm failed, it would reveal their only potential strategy to the Krall-2. They would quickly adapt and close any discovered vulnerabilities. Every simulation needed to be perfect, every calculation precise. The quantum disruption signal was unlike any digital code ever created. It could potentially cause a complete breakdown of the Krall-2's massive network. Thousands of interconnected machines would suddenly lose their ability to communicate, coordinate, and function. Galactic researchers began to gather around David's workstation. What had seemed like a crazy theory was now looking like humanity's best chance. The quiet researcher from a small research facility might be the person who could save countless civilizations. Each computer simulation showed more promising results. The signal would travel through the Krall-2's network like a virus, creating small breakdowns that would grow exponentially. Mathematical models predicted a potential total system collapse if the signal was delivered perfectly. David remained calm. Years of patient research had prepared him for this moment. He understood that defeating the Krall-2 was not about brute force, but about understanding their complex communication system and finding its weakest point. As the final simulations ran, something extraordinary happened. The quantum disruption signal showed a 94% potential success rate. For the first time, humans had discovered a way to potentially stop the machine creatures that had been destroying galaxies for thousands of years. The research facility felt different. Hope replaced the previous feeling of hopelessness. One quiet researcher had done what thousands of advanced civilizations could not. He had found a potential way to stop the Krall-2. The research vessel Horizon moved silently through the darkness of space. David Kim sat at the main control station, his hands steady, eyes focused on the complex computer systems in front of him. This was the moment everything would change. The confrontation with the Krall-2. Outside the ship's windows, massive Krall-2 machines moved like metal mountains. They were close to the central trading hub of the Galactic Confederation, preparing to consume another star system. No one had ever survived a direct encounter with these machine creatures. David's quantum disruption signal was loaded into the ship's advanced communication systems. Years of research had come down to this single moment. He knew the risks were enormous. If his plan failed, humanity would lose its only chance to stop the Krall-2. The ship's sensors showed the approaching machine creatures. They were massive. Some machines stretched kilometers in length with complex metallic structures that could transform and adapt in seconds. Their communication network was visible as complex energy patterns surrounding their massive bodies. Most pilots would have been terrified, but David remained calm. He had studied these creatures for years, understanding their movement patterns and communication systems. Every calculation, every simulation had prepared him for this moment. As the Kral-2 machines began their standard approach sequence, David activated the first stage of his plan. The ship moved with precision, positioning itself exactly where he had calculated in thousands of computer simulations. One wrong move would destroy everything. The quantum disruption signal began to transmit. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Kral-2 machines continued their advance, their massive metallic bodies moving with calculated precision. But deep within their communication network, something was changing. Small disruptions started to appear. Most would be invisible to normal scanning systems, but David watched carefully. Tiny breakdowns in the Kral-2's communication network began to grow. Each moment, the signal spread further, creating more complex disruptions. Alarms started to sound on the massive machine creatures. Their communication systems began to fail in ways they had never experienced before. The signal moved through their network like a complex virus, breaking down their ability to coordinate and communicate. The horizon moved carefully, transmitting the signal at precisely calculated intervals. David's fingers moved quickly across the control systems, adjusting the signal's frequency and strength. Years of research had prepared him for this exact moment. Suddenly, the first Kral-2 machine began to malfunction. Its massive metallic body started to lose coordination, its complex systems breaking down. Other machines around it began to show similar problems. Their seemingly perfect network was falling apart. David watched as the quantum disruption signal did its work. The Kral-2 machines, which had destroyed thousands of civilizations, were now losing their ability to function. Their communication network, once their greatest strength, was now their greatest weakness. The Galactic Confederation's monitoring stations watched in disbelief. What was happening was impossible. No one had ever stopped the Kral-2 before. But this small human research vessel was defeating the most dangerous threat the galaxy had ever known. More Kral-2 machines began to fail. Their complex metallic bodies stopped moving, their communication systems completely broken. What had seemed like an unstoppable force was now falling apart in a matter of hours. David remained focused. He knew the confrontation was not over. Each moment required precise calculations and careful monitoring. One mistake could allow the Kral-2 to adapt and recover. As the hours passed, more and more Kral-2 machines stopped functioning. Their massive metallic bodies became silent, floating helplessly in space. The signal continued to spread, breaking down their entire network. The horizon moved carefully, continuing to transmit the quantum disruption signal. David knew that this was just the beginning. The Kral-2 would not be completely defeated in a single moment. But humanity had found its way to fight back. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy saw hope. A quiet researcher had done what entire civilizations could not. He had found a way to stop the Kral-2. The galaxy changed forever in just 72 hours. David Kim's quantum disruption signal had done what thousands of advanced civilizations could not: completely neutralize the Kral-2 threat. Monitoring stations across multiple star systems watched, in disbelief. The machine creatures that had destroyed countless worlds were suddenly falling apart. Their massive metallic bodies, which once represented total destruction, now drifted silently in space like abandoned metal sculptures. Scientists from hundreds of different civilizations began studying the data. How could one human researcher do what entire armies and advanced technological societies had failed to accomplish? David's approach was simple yet revolutionary. He understood the Kral-2's weakness was their strength. The Galactic Confederation called an emergency meeting. Representatives from different planetary systems gathered to understand what had happened. David was invited to explain his research, but he remained humble. He saw his work not as a personal victory, but as a solution for all living beings. Refugee. Populations that had been running from the Kraltu for generations could now return to their home systems. Planets that had been abandoned were slowly being reclaimed. The constant fear that had gripped the galaxy for thousands of years was suddenly lifting. Research teams began analyzing the remaining Kraltu machines. They discovered that David's signal had not just temporarily disabled them, but had fundamentally broken their ability to reorganize and communicate. The threat was truly over. Humanity's reputation changed overnight. What was once considered a minor species was now seen as a civilization of innovative problem solvers. David became a symbol of human potential, quiet, patient, and capable of seeing solutions where others saw only problems. The economic impact was massive. Trillions of resources that had been spent on defense could now be used for exploration, research, and rebuilding. Star systems that had been constant battlegrounds could now focus on development and cooperation. Alien civilizations began studying David's research. His quantum disruption algorithm became a standard part of technological defense strategies. Universities across the galaxy started teaching his approach to complex problem solving. David himself remained unchanged. He returned to his small research facility, continuing his work. Fame did not interest him. He was more concerned with understanding the universe and solving complex problems. The Kraltu machines became museum pieces. Massive metallic structures were preserved to remind future generations of the threat that humanity had stopped. David's quantum signal was displayed alongside these machines, a testament to scientific innovation. Diplomatic relations between different civilizations improved. The shared experience of surviving the Kraltu threat brought species together. They realized that cooperation was more important than individual differences. Research into quantum communication and digital networks exploded. David's work had shown that understanding a system's fundamental structure was more important than traditional fighting strategies. Younger generations were inspired. Children across different planets learned about the quiet researcher who had saved the galaxy. David became a symbol of how patience, careful observation, and intelligent thinking could solve seemingly impossible problems. The galaxy's perspective changed. Technological threats were no longer seen as unbeatable. Species began developing more adaptive and intelligent defense strategies inspired by David's approach. Economic systems that had been disrupted by constant Kraltu attacks began to stabilize. Trade routes that had been abandoned were reopened. Planets that had been considered lost were now being rediscovered and rebuilt. David received numerous awards, but he remained humble. He continued his research, believing that there were always more problems to solve, more mysteries to understand. The Kraltu threat became a turning point in galactic history. It marked the moment when humanity proved it was not just a minor species, but a civilization capable of extraordinary achievements. As years passed, the story of how one quiet researcher saved the galaxy became a legend. David Kim had shown that intelligence, patience, and careful thinking could overcome even the most seemingly impossible challenges. The galaxy would never be the same again. And it all started with a simple idea from a researcher who refused to give up.